So they're from all over the world, but doing great work in the Americas. And I'm going to turn it over to you now, Sarah. And thanks for being here today, all three of you. We're really grateful.
Thank you. Yeah, we're very excited to be here as well. So thank you so much, Anne, for the introduction and for hosting this for us as well. And I'm very excited to to be able to present Macaw Recovery Network and to be joined by two of my most amazing team members, Jose and César. I'll actually start to give you a little bit of an introduction of the Macaw Recovery Network, but I definitely do want to give them some time as well, so I'll try and keep it short. I will try and start by sharing the screen. Sorry about this, always kind of trying to figure it out. Okay, so I'll translate that into human language. So my name is Sarah de Groot. I'm a co-founder and head of development at Macaw Recovery Network. I've been involved with the organization since 2015, since before it was known as the Macaw Recovery Network, with the Hour Project, and lived in Costa Rica up until just over a year ago. My passion for nature is way back. I actually became a vegetarian when I was 12. I ran raising money for charity. I was an ambassador of Earth Hour, turning off lights behind everyone's back, and etc. So for me, working with MRN is this great, great mix where I can actually, turn this passion into action as well. And so I want to make sure that with MRN, we're creating a future for our for next generations and making sure that the beautiful wonders of the earth can remain. So that brings me to Macaw Recovery Network, and and our organization is a Costa Rican entity. We're based in Costa Rica, known in Spanish as the Red de Recuperación de Guacamayas. Our mission is to protect and recover endangered parrot populations in the Americas. And that fits within the bigger overarching vision of seeing a future in which parrots and its ecosystems thrive and coexist with local communities. And especially this combination of, it's not just about the parrots for us, it's about the ecosystems, and it's about engaging the local communities in ensuring that we can have that long lasting impact. So that's where for us, a lot of our work involves the three different pillars of the people and the parrots and the habitat, and making sure that we can have that, we can make that change and make it permanent as well. So the species that we work with are currently 3 species, and we, looking at our mission and the protecting of parrots that are endangered. For us, currently we're working in Costa Rica, and we're slowly expanding to different countries, as Anne was saying. But we are currently working with 2 species of macaws that are native to Costa Rica and another species. The first one is the scarlet macaw. So the scarlet macaw is a big flagship species, and that's where our work is, as we're trying to create a viable, healthy ecosystems. The scarlet macaws just do the job wherever we go. Even if nobody's ever seen or heard a parrot, they just become passionate when they see the scarlet macaw. They're just gorgeous. They're not critically endangered, but there is only about 20 to 50,000 worldwide, and in Costa Rica maybe around 2,000. And when we look at the range, this is IUCN, so we actually follow IUCN guidelines. You can see a little bit of the range across Central America and South America. But when you look at the purple on the map, that's where they're possibly extinct, or at least decreasing quickly. And so with the scarlet macaws, there is a big range, but they only have smaller populations left across this range. So it means that these populations they're not always able to migrate or like successfully go between these areas, and they might be more vulnerable to local extinction, which we see in Costa Rica as well. So this is a map back from the early days before 1900s, when the scarlet macaws were found across the country, except for in the high elevations, which is the white in the middle. And then now we're only seeing very small isolations across the Pacific, mostly along this coast here. This is Nicaragua at the top. And then some smaller populations are recovering up in the north as well. And then our stations are up here, down on the west coast. Another species that we work with is the great green macaw. And great green macaw is critically endangered and beautiful when it flies. It's not only green, it actually has a lot of colors, this beautiful rainbow species. MRN was actually involved a year or two ago with reevaluating their classification by IUCN, and now they've been able to classify them as critically endangered. The world population is estimated to be between 500 and 1,000 individuals, with in Costa Rica around 300. So Costa Rica is a stronghold of this species. So at least a third of the population is found in Costa Rica. So you can see the range here. They're mostly found across Central America, just 6 countries. And on most in most countries, so also in Costa Rica, you can see they're on the east coast. They're found on the Caribbean side, in the lowlands. And this is probably linked to the mountain almond tree. That's a specific type of tree that it's a hardwood tree that they're very much dependent on. So a big part of their food and nesting sources are found in this tree. And so with the decline of this hardwood tree, we've also seen that decline in the great green macaw. So there's a very big correlation between those two species. And then the third species that was just added last year is the yellow-naped Amazon parrot. And the yellow-naped Amazon parrot is very charismatic, and that's also their downfall. So we participated about 3 years ago, we participated in a study where we were monitoring the population for reevaluating their status based on a previous study from 10 years ago. And it was found that the species had declined in 10 years, the species had declined by about 67%. And still 9 out of 10 nests are being poached from the wild. So for the yellow-naped Amazon parrot, they're in big trouble. So that's why we added them to our repertoire, and we'll be growing our programs over the coming years. The world population is estimated to be about between 1,000 and 2,500. And then in Costa Rica, I think it's about 660, but Cesar might be able to correct me.
A little over 1,000.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's the last census. Yeah, that's
1,200 roughly, at least.
Yeah. Thank you. That's actually twice as much as I said. So thanks for that. Also, MRN was involved with that, the reclassification with the IUCN to critically endangered, and all of that helps. It doesn't change much to the population. It just helps us to actually raise awareness to the fact that they're really in trouble, and their population trend is decreasing as well. So a big part of their so when we look at protecting species as our mission is protecting and recovering, is the first part is protecting. So we need to make sure we stop the decline. 1 in 3 parrot species are threatened with extinction. So we need to stop that decline. And the decline is mostly related, especially historically related to the pet trade. So here there's a bunch of Amazons that were confiscated from the illegal pet trade. And in many cases, only 1 out of 10 parrots that are poached from the wild actually make it to their destination. So it's a very tragic process. And unfortunately, it's still happening. And also in Costa Rica, we're seeing it with the yellow-naped Amazon parrot, less so with the 2 species of macaws. So when we look at stopping the decline, is really looking at, okay, where are these threats coming from, and with the poaching as well. historically, so especially with the macaws in Costa Rica, it became illegal to have tropical parrots or to have native parrots in captivity. And that actually resulted in a big confiscation of these parrots that were in captivity. Back in the early, I think it was 93, 98, around that time, that's when it became illegal. And then in the following years, the police were actually confiscating these birds, and there needed to be a place for these birds to go, right? So the police, only if they have a place for these birds to go, they can actually go out and confiscate. And the confiscation was needed to then locally to stop this local trade as well, and changing the attitudes in the idea that keeping their native parrots was part of the culture. So that it's kind of that slow change of eliminating them from captivity that helped then reduce future poaching from the wild. So that's how the Macaw Recovery Network has its kind of heritage. Is we confiscated, we took these birds off the hands from the police, which enabled them to confiscate more birds, and we ended up with over 200 macaws. And some of those were able to be released, but in many cases they had been in captivity for too long or not in physical condition well enough to be able to be released into the wild. So that's how we ended up with a big center with macaws. And although their life quality of life has increased significantly, unfortunately they won't be able to be released into the wild, but they can still socialize and they can still play with each other and have a really good life, and actually still contribute to conservation through producing babies. So we actually give them through dating services. We give them the opportunity to create their families, and then their offspring is being released into the wild. And that's how over the years the organization has released nearly 200 macaws, both scarlet macaws and great green macaws, in different parts of Costa Rica. And here you can see a cute a video shot of one of their feeders in Punta Eslita, which is where our breeding center is located. So we do give them supplemental feeding, and which is mostly because we don't believe that these birds will be independent as we release them. We do a soft release technique. So we actually provide some supplemental feeding to ensure that they have the right nutrition, and they're healthy enough to then go out and explore and learn about these new environments, because we release birds in areas where they went locally extinct, because then we can advance the knowledge built in these populations to cover the years in which the existing wild population can recover to those areas. And then when they blend, that knowledge is already built from that area. So there's a lot of work involved in the post monitoring and just ensuring that they're healthy, but also since a lot of the forest in which they're released is not necessarily old enough or like primary forest, like to be able to provide nest cavities, for example, because those are normally in big trees where branches fall off, and it's old trees, and in many cases they're secondary forest. So Costa Rica is very green, but a lot of it is secondary forest because at some point there was deforestation and it's all recovered. But it takes many years to actually for a tree to form cavities. So what we do is we do support them. This is actually one of the nests that the macaws do nest in, and it's a palm tree, and they're actually pretty bad nests, and that's why we want to discourage them to go there, because they're like, as soon as the first rains of the season hit, these just become like cardboard and they crumble and fall down. We've actually lost some eggs and a few chicks that have literally hit the ground, or almost, when these palms fell down. So what we do is we provide artificial nest boxes for our released population, and then we encourage them to use those instead. So then the other part of our work is actually working with the wild population, and making sure that we protect birds that are in the wild, and protect those chicks from being poached. We use monitoring cameras. we weigh them, we try and better understand the population. So the great green macaw especially was not studied very well. So there's a lot of knowledge to be gained to be actually better, to be able to understand what's going on and how can we best help these birds. So studies have been so collecting data and studying the population and even collecting genetics to understand what their genetic diversity is. All of those things are very, very important so that we can better adjust our conservation strategies for the species. So this year we're actually putting 10 radio collars on some great green macaw chicks, and then we'll be following them, their whereabouts, and making sure that we better understand where they go after their breeding season, because that's still an unknown, and they can fly quite a way in a day. So another big thing, and that's mostly when we kind of make that link from the protection and stopping that decline, is really also looking at the recovery, and all of this goes hand in hand. It's a big gray area as well, because when we try and engage local communities and inspire them about about nature, then you can actually create a long-lasting impact that really will help the species, and in that kind of relation with their becoming future ambassadors or changing their behaviors in the future. That's really what we try and do with our educational work and engaging children. That also helps we also educate children, for example, about good land use. And the land use, again, is important because of the big scale land conversion in Costa Rica. So we actually back in the 80s, when the fast food industry boomed, that's when there was an initial transition of forest to cattle. And that was especially in a big part of Costa Rica, where a lot of forest was lost due to cattle ranching. And then that became less viable, and then there was more tropical fruit plantation that made place for that. And in particular, the pineapple plantations are expanding very, very fast in Costa Rica, and especially in the north of where the great green macaws are found. And this might be an interesting but shocking fact that in the US, 85% of pineapples that you buy in the shop will come from Costa Rica. So Costa Rica is a big producer of pineapple. And the problem is, as you can see here, is it's just a desert. These are all spikes, and there's absolutely no animal that can survive or live in this desert. So that's a big threat. And then again, through working with local communities and inspiring them to also make that changes or change their attitudes or future aspirations of life and life decisions, for example, that will make that big difference. So another thing that we did in early COVID time is we worked with a group of women who up in this area as well lost their jobs because of COVID, and normally they would have jobs through tourism. They lost their jobs, and then we actually trained them to become field biologists for us. So they helped monitor nests, and then protecting chicks and having their own nests to monitor. And then that actually led them, so through the education that we did with them, and these are very local ladies, through making them aware about that the species are amazing and what's happening to them and all the risks around them. They actually had, at the end of the season of monitoring the nests, one of the ladies actually came with the idea, like, why don't we build our own nursery? Why don't we help the species for the long term? Because they obviously saw that the mountain almond tree and many other tree species are so heavily linked to the macaw, and that there is forest, there is areas where there is forest that can be recovered. So that's so this was one of two of the nests that the ladies monitored, and then they were observing these nests very early in the morning for a few weeks. These are the ladies after they completed their kind of exam to be able to do this work. And then the lady far on the right, I believe she was the one that came up with the idea to actually build their own nursery the tree nursery in their own town called Boca Tapada. So that's a program that we're doing right now, funded by the Disney Foundation, very generously, a 2-year program in which we can train these ladies to become experts in growing trees. So a variety of native trees, because even though the mountain almond tree is an important one, we do want to create a good diversity of trees, and then work with local people, local landowners. A lot of the land in Costa Rica is privately owned. We want to make sure that what we plant is going to last as well, and not just plant because we can plant trees, but also make sure that we have that the interaction and the community integration, and making sure that it's a lasting, successful project as well of planting these trees. And these ladies are not only building their own nursery in their town and collecting seeds locally and growing these seeds and planting them, but they're actually going to be going out and doing education and outreach in the local schools in their area, and then including these children in all of the reforestation activities. So there was a recent tree planting activity. We already have an existing nursery of our own as well, so we did have a few reforestations that we've been able to do with them, and to really make them feel inspired about this work. Okay, so this is my side of it. So really looking at the bigger picture, Macaw Recovery Network. We're currently a quickly growing organization. We have about 16 local staff in Costa Rica, 4 different locations and counting as well. We've recently added Jose on our team, who will be helping to lead a network. And the network will really bring together all of these different programs as well, and ensuring that whatever we do as an organization has a big impact on other organizations as well, and really just building bridges, collaborations, and helping conservationists feel inspired and be able to do this work for many years to come as well, because that's another a big problem that we're seeing with conservationists across the board, is they just burn out. We all just love our work way too much and we just burn out. So that's really a very good role that Jose is taking, and I'm very excited that he'll be joining you all live physically on an event in the summer. He'll be able to answer some questions as well later, but I would like to hand over the microphone to César, who is leading our bird program. César is a very passionate Costa Rican biologist. He's focused and has a very big interest in behavior and conservation, and is really able to take on this very immensely difficult role at our organization, where it's about this massive captive breeding center with nearly 120 macaws right now, with lots of chicks that need to go out, that he needs to help and coordinate, and then we've got this big, the whole wild population to look after as well, and a lot of work there, and a big team to manage there. So César joined us last year, 21. He joined us, and we're very excited with everything that he's doing right now, and look forward to so that you can hear more about all of his work. So César, up to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And I would like to say thank you all for joining us today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, Sarah mentioned, our captive breeding, our breeding center, which is one of the few things that we do in the bird program. Myself, I consider myself, I don't know, a bird watcher, an ornithologist, a bird nerd. I mean, sometimes I have issues with my wife because birds are calling, and so I need to pay attention to them. And luckily now I'm in an amazing organization working with an amazing group of birds that are parrots and parakeets, which is overall just an interesting group, and one with which we humans have a lot of things in common. And I mean, we humans, we know that we have had parrots and parakeets for thousands of years for different reasons. and we have even moved them around and such. And in certain way, that hasn't been the best for the birds. So we're now, from a biological perspective, and especially from the conservation point of view, we're trying to do something to help these birds. So today I'm gonna focus more on this project that we have, that it's about breeding birds, producing chicks, as you see here on the left. That's a brand new gray-green macaw, just 1 day old. And hopefully to take them from this stage to the one that you can see on the right. So they would be strong and smart and able to fly again in areas where, unfortunately, they don't occur at this moment. Okay, I can do this somewhat open. So if there are questions, they can be put in the chat. And if somebody wants to let me know, there's a little question here and there, I'm more than free to open a conversation about it. All right. Okay. So just let me move this a little bit so I can see. So that's a map of Costa Rica, basically a geographic map of Costa Rica, because this is where we work. And so you have a better idea of some of the projects that we have. As you see in colors that are more brownish and yellowish, those are the mountains. So from the northwest to the southwest, pretty much the country is divided by mountains. And everything that you see on green, just a couple of centuries ago, it was basically pristine tropical forest. Towards the northwest, it was tropical dry forest, but both on the Caribbean slope and in the north. And in the Central and the South Pacific, what we have was pretty much continuous rainforest, tall rainforest. In Costa Rica, we really probably didn't have anything similar to wild savannas. And most of the open areas that we had was basically because just a tree fell down or there was a landslide. So mostly natural reasons, other than probably some small areas here and there that were cleared by some of the native populations that lived in Costa Rica. And all along this lowland tropical rainforest, it was the pristine great area for the two species of macaws that Sarah was talking about, for they to live that. That's their habitat, that's their natural habitat. In the north and in the east, we had the gray-green macaw. All across the Pacific slope of Costa Rica, all the way from Nicaragua to Panama, we had scarlet macaws, with some populations of scarlet macaws also in the Caribbean of Costa Rica. Now, with the population of Costa Rica started to grow, we started to clear the land. And unfortunately, in the last centuries, when we lost most of the forest that we have in Costa Rica. So I want you to focus just on this area and the next map. Why? Because that's an area of interest, especially for the gray-green macaw. This is a map that's showing the forest about 20 years ago in Costa Rica. As you see, most of the forest that we have left is in the center. So that basically means it's in the mountains. Just a little bit left in the Eastern Caribbean, both in the north and the south, a little bit in the South Pacific of Costa Rica, but many areas that were dry forest and tropical rainforest around here, they were lost. Now, I know that Costa Rica has been coined sometimes even a champion of conservation, but that doesn't mean that we have been able to preserve pristine habitats all across the country. And many of the areas where we have lost most of the habitat, that's basically to try to raise cattle and a couple of large monocultures. First, bananas, and second, especially in the last 20 or 30 years, pineapple. So where you see this yellow circle right in the center is one of the areas where we do most of the field work with gray-green macaws in the wild. But part of what we want to do as Macaw Recovery Network is also to be able to bring macaws to areas where in the last 50 or 60 years they had been lost. And why were they lost? For example, in the area around here, mostly because the forest was cut or parts of the forest was lost. Also, probably because of poaching, even hunting for food. So one of our major aims now is to repopulate these areas, okay? Areas that are completely free of macaws at this moment. Now, there are a couple of different ways in which we can go about repopulating an empty habitat, because there's habitat that is good enough for them, we just don't have the birds. One of those ways is through dispersal. Basically, you create some sort of natural corridors. So from a population of birds, some birds start to move and discover some of these habitats. But to build that across a large area, it's hard. And especially when we talk about parrots. Remember that parrots are largely smart birds. They actually learn a lot of things culturally. What does it mean that they learn things culturally? That they learn from their family, they learn from their parents, from other individuals they meet around. So the knowledge is largely passed from generation to generation. And because there have been birds that have lost part of this knowledge, it's hard to give it to new birds. So we think that at least in certain areas of Costa Rica, where we have good forests for macaws, there are no macaws because first we lost them, and second, the populations that are closer to them don't know about these areas. So they just don't decide to venture to new areas because they don't know what they could find there. Now, the other possibility is to do a translocation. So how do you do a translocation? First, you need to breed the birds. You need to train the birds. And then you can search for a good place where you can bring back birds. And that is one of the major focuses of my work as bird manager in Macaw Recovery Network. We have a breeding center, and in this breeding center, we're producing chicks that soon are gonna be released in the wild, in areas where macaws haven't been seen in decades, actually. We have done already some translocations, as Sarah mentioned, and this is in the dry forest of Guanacaste, near the Punta Islita breeding center that we have. And that scruffy looking macaw, it's actually because she's raising chicks in this nest. So despite this bird being born at a breeding center, being fed by its parents and by people, even providing a little bit of food for them, they can go around with basically with their macaw's lives. They can breed, and many of them are great parents, very successful. So little by little, we have seen how even with a little bit of help, they can repopulate areas and go about on their lives. We have good examples of how well this can help. This is an example of one of the most successful translocation efforts that has ever been made in the world. And that's a California condor. That's a beautiful male. You can see that this one, it's number 87. California condor used to be a species found across Western United States and Northwestern Mexico. They used to be found all along the coast, but some also in desertic areas, quite a ways towards the central part of the US and Mexico. But the populations were so low that there was a moment in which all free living individuals were actually caught and brought into captivity to start a breeding effort. The population went as low as 14 individuals. So you can, I mean, for those that don't know, this was a bird that was pretty much considered extinct because there were so few birds left. But the process of breeding them worked out really well. And now there's actually quite a few hundred. They're breeding in the wild. They're largely monitored, and but it's a successful story, and they have good habitat and they have food. So the important thing here is that it's not just breeding them for breeding them, is that you can breed them, bring them back to a habitat, the habitat where they used to live, and they can go about on their lives, even increasing the population. And something like that is what we're aiming with great green macaws in areas where we don't have them. Okay, now I'm gonna switch a little bit to the breeding center that we have in Punta Islita. At Punta Islita at this moment, we are breeding the 2 species of macaws, and probably very soon in the future, we're gonna start some efforts with the yellow-naped parrots. And what do we do with the birds there? Well, some of these birds came as pets. Some of these birds, we don't know where they came from, but we try to give them the best conditions that we can. And sometimes they get along so well that they want to have babies of their own. So when that happens, we usually take a pair like these ones here that you can see are having a blast, just hanging upside down because they're parrots and they can do it. And we put them in somewhat private enclosures where they can not only decide to procreate, but also we give them nest boxes so they can put their eggs there and raise chicks. So what's the main objective that we have at the breeding center? To try to produce as many chicks as we can from great green macaws, okay? And not only as much, but also chicks that are healthy and chicks that would have the skills to go back and repopulate the habitat. As I mentioned before, this is a chick of a great green macaw, only 1 day old. They usually, on average, lay 3 eggs. Sometimes it can go up to 4, both at the breeding center and in the wild. In the wild, it's more typical that 2 chicks are raised by each pair. So how do we do this? How do we breed the birds? Well, and as you can see, these are not macaws. These are just happy, bright people that work for us, just as bright as the macaws are. But the reason why I have this picture is because I wouldn't be able to accomplish so much if I wouldn't have a great group of volunteers and workers that do so many things at the breeding center. So rather than give them the thanks at the end of the talk, I want to say that these are the big heroes of our breeding center. They are the ones that wake up every day at 5 a.m. to produce, to chop and get the diet ready for more than 130 birds on a daily basis. It doesn't matter whether it's a Sunday or a day off. They need to be there. They are there to take care of our birds. Okay, so what do we do? We have an amazing diet for them that includes fruits, it includes seeds. So we try to keep the parents as healthy and strong as possible. Why? Because we want them to produce those amazing, beautiful, or for some people, ugly looking baby macaws. This is a small great green macaw. Maybe this is roughly a month old. And every 2 or 3 days, we do different health checks on them. We weight them to see how are they growing and how much are they growing. Usually there is a difference in size because the first chick usually hatches 1 to 3 days before the second, and so on until the third one. So sometimes the third chick is like a third smaller than the biggest one, but still, if we have good parents, they're gonna be able to feed them all. All the food for the chicks are actually provided by the parents. So the parents go into the food bowls, they eat all of this, they kind of mash it up in their pouch, and then it goes back into the chick more as a gooey but very nutritious food. As the chicks start to grow, you can see they start to get more and more colorful. And during this stage, they already start to produce quite a number of sounds, and we keep on doing checks. For example, the last time we were there, we found that there were some butterflies and some of the ears of these guys. We checked them for all sorts of diseases and such. And if they need to, we provide them a little bit of extra food. And after a couple of months, actually around 11 to 12 weeks, they're finally ready to leave the nest. So this is a nest box that you can see here. That's the entrance. And that you see is the wing of a chick. It actually takes them a lot of time to learn just only how to deal with their strange new bodies. They have a big head, strong legs, strong bills, and two things that hang on their sides that we call wings. And they don't have a clue what to do with wings. Usually chicks, for probably 3 to a couple of weeks, the first thing that they do is they just stick the head out. They stick the head out, they look outside, but they don't venture out. It takes them weeks to learn to do that. And actually, this chick was actually just trying to learn how to just walk outside the nest. Unfortunately, he tried with a wing first instead of just plucking the head out. So as you see, I mean, they need to train themselves. It's not only us, it's not only their parents, but chicks need to put a lot of effort into this. After the chicks come out of the nest, we keep them with the parents for a few months, so they learn how to eat, how to maneuver food, how to crack open seeds. These birds have amazingly strong bills and mandibles that they can use for opening seeds, and they learn a lot by watching their parents, watching other chicks doing it. So after a few months with the parents, we put them in other aviaries where they start interacting with other birds, especially with other chicks, just like themselves. And they start competing for food. They start to know each other. They probably learn new vocalizations and so forth. And that also helps them to get them stronger, to fly more, to compete for food, because they're going to go out in the wild and they're going to have to do that. They're going to have to be on their own without not much help from us. And why do we want to do this? Because we want to have new thriving populations of great green macaws in areas where we don't have them. Those are the results that we're expecting and that we feel very positive that we're going to get. We already have been able to do it around the area where we have the breeding site. And this is a picture of scarlet macaws, basically free-ranging scarlet macaws on their way to roost. And we want to have something quite like this in areas that haven't seen macaws, in beautiful, pristine forests that haven't seen them in decades now. And that's actually what we want to see, a macaw in the wild. All right, so I want to stop presenting here, but I'm more than happy if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. There was a lot of bad news and good news in all of that. So I'm going to hope that the good news continues to grow and the bad news continues to decline with the good works that you all are doing. And while everyone's still here, I want to put a plug in for our retreat in June when Jose is going to join us. And after he was in Bolivia for 13 years in the field, so he knows a lot about conservation before he joined the Macaw Recovery Network. So if you, I hope that you all will consider joining us for the retreat as well, because there's a lot to learn about not only taking care of our parrots in captivity, but what we need to do for the parrots in the wild to hope that they can sustain themselves and repopulate. So I don't even see any questions, but you know, as Jose knows, I like one of my favorite questions is what are the birds eating in the wild? What are the scarlet and great green macaws eating in the wild in Costa Rica? Cesar, is that a good question for you?
Yeah, sorry, I was reading. There was another question as well. So
Oh yeah, I'll try to pay attention to that also.
okay.
Yeah, tell us what the macaws eat in the wild. The Amazon too.
Yeah, so largely macaws and most parrots, they eat seeds.
When
So
you say seeds, can you define seed?
yeah, so for example, in Costa Rica, we know that the great green macaw largely depends on a tree that is called the mountain almond. It's maybe a 2.5 inch long fruit, super hard, really, really hard. You wouldn't be able to crack it open on your own with your own hands. But they basically use that bill, that is largely an amazing tool, to crack it open in two, and they get the seed, the inner seed. But
Can you
other
spell
than
that for me? How do you spell that?
the the species,
Yes.
we call it mountain almond.
Mountain almond. Okay, got you.
Yes, it's not a true almond as the ones that you produce in North America.
It's a fruit. Mhm.
It's a fruit, yeah. And many of the trees that especially Sarah showed where we're climbing up to their nest are actually mountain almonds. So they're tall trees. Some of them can grow 140, 150 feet on elevation. So they're really giants. It takes hundreds of years for them to grow. And it's also the most important tree for the species to nest. So something like 90% of the nests that we have monitored are in this species. So it's an important food source for the bird, but also the most important nesting site of it, or nesting tree. But other than that, there's close to 50 species of plants, largely trees, that we have seen that the great green macaws eat. Some could be amazingly toxic for humans. I mean, there is one that they love to eat, and sometimes only touching the tree with your skin will give you a major rush, and they can digest that without any problems.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So in the nursery that you talked about earlier, Sarah, that's where they're growing a lot of like the mountain almond and other things, the really important ones.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Yeah, I think there's a list of maybe 18 or so different species or 21. They're all native trees, and yeah, some of those are as if not more endangered as the macaws are. So they're all good species to cultivate as well as they're not doing well on themselves.
And Karen had a question about formulating the diet during the breeding season. Is it same or different during the breeding season?
Yes. So we depending on the birds and their status, we have different diets. So for example, during the breeding season, to this mixture of fruit and chickpeas and beans that we add more protein and more calcium. So for example, we can add tiny bits of cooked chicken and eggs, and that it's yes. And I mean, it's mixed between all of that, and they eat it. And also we can provide just powdered calcium. And when we have chicks, we can get some chick formula that helps them with some of the nutrients that they need as well.
Because eating animal protein for birds in captivity is a controversial issue that's discussed often amongst veterinarians. So, and every time I go somewhere to see birds in the wild, I'm always asking about the diet and whether or not they're eating some kind of animal protein, you know, eggs or insects or whatever. And that seems to vary too. So it's a really interesting topic about animal protein. So
yeah, it is. And I have to say that, I mean, I don't know it would be hard to say what's the preference between, for example, a free-ranging macaw, if it's going to eat a little bit of protein in terms of, I don't know, some larvae, for example, if in a seed or in a fruit, or they would feel disgusted, just as we do, and toss it. You know that parrots and parakeets in general, they are very good at just eating a tiny bit of something and tossing the rest.
Right.
Why they do that? I haven't seen much written about. I mean, you see almost any bird, they try to get as much they can from a fruit. Parrots, like, no, I don't like this one, I'm gonna throw it. Don't like. I don't know why.
Repopulating the plant life of the forest, the common reason I see. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, I can say that in the birds that I cross paths with, we feed eggs, which is also controversial, but it's almost always the first thing they go for, almost always. So,
Really?
And it's not like we give them a lot, it's a little bit, and it's a great conduit for other things as well, but it's almost always the first thing they go for. So to me, that says there's something about that protein that they find more than just delicious. They find it valuable at some level.
Yeah. There's another question by Jessica Pira.
Just following on that, I'm just going to share a link, which is some people might find interesting, which is a video of a morning food preparation. It's a very quick time lapse. Food preparation at the breeding center. And this is already back from 2019, I think. So there's a lot more bowls right now because we have a lot more birds at the moment. There are a lot of chicks that are ready to be released. So the whole counter is full with bowls every morning and every afternoon, and it's a very, very detailed process of which bowl gets what food, and a lot of different types of food and fruit going in there. A lot of bean cooking and a lot of preparation to be able to do that every day.
I was very impressed when Jose took us in Bolivia to the Endangered Species Center, and their diet there was very organized and a lot of extremely, all whole foods and very, very well thought out. It's very impressive.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's see.
I just want to add something about the protein. We did a study in Bolivia with mostly was related with parakeets, and we found out that cliff parakeets, they eat a lot of parasites of trees, especially those ones that they modify leaves to make kind of cavities so they can put eggs inside, and so the larvae can grow and then it can live when it's a new, but like a butterfly or something like that. And we found out that actually parakeets were affecting positively those trees by acting kind of like gardens of those trees, because they were reducing the amount of parasites present on those trees, avoiding those trees to suffer heavily from parasite infestation, and finally ensuring the survival of the trees. And at the same time, we found out that there is a close relation between parrots that use, so normally the feeling we have is that parrots throw a lot of food, especially in captivity. And if you go to the wild, you can see that parrots are actually affecting those trees, but normally they go to trees that they have plenty amount of fruits, which mean, and normally when they go is during the time of the year that those fruits are not mature, they're not ready to fail by their own. So if we go to the commercial world where humans we are involved, some trees like avocados here in Spain, the producers, they reduce manually the amount of fruits that are on the tree, so that the fruits that are left on the tree, they can grow bigger and have a better production. So actually what parrot does in the wild, by attacking trees with plenty of fruits, it's basically reducing the amount of fruits that are available on those trees, so the fruits that are left, they can grow bigger and produce better. So it's really, there's clearly a benefit by the ecological role that parrots do on those trees, on those plants. And apart from that, they're great dispersers, even better than other species that are being well known as dispersers, like toucans or tapirs. It's already well demonstrated that macaws are clearly guardians of the forest.
Sounds like a symbiotic relationship. It's very positive. So when you say cliff parakeets, Jose, is that green cheek conures?
No, it's the cliff parakeets. It
Oh,
was,
it's like the Quaker.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just wanted everybody online to understand what species that was. That's right. They look a lot like the Quakers. That's right.
Yeah.
All right. So you were gonna tackle that next question, I think. Cesar.
Yes. It says, is there a need to have good security for the breeding center, or you feel it is pretty safe? Poachers of nests are in the jungle areas. Okay, let me answer the first one. So locally in the area where they have the breeding center, it's a very small, secure area. So, I mean, we're concerned, but we're not too concerned. We think, I mean, we have the needed measurements. So we don't consider it's a big risk that someone would come to try to, get one of our birds. We need to be more careful though with other wild animals in the area. So we need to try to get, I mean, we take all the measurements needed because, I mean, there are some wild animals that could try to go for a macaw. Poachers of nests are just in the jungle areas. So that depends a little on the species. So for great green macaws, at least, we don't think that poaching is a major threat for the species for a couple of reasons, at least at this moment in Costa Rica. I cannot say the same across the rest of the distribution, but at least in Costa Rica, the chicks are not, I mean, it's really hard to access to the nests because they are way up high in trees. I mean, we have nests that are around 95 feet high. So not any person has the skills to climb up there to try to steal a chick. Some are a little lower down. For scarlet macaws, it has been a problem in certain areas of Costa Rica. Their nests could be much lower and more accessible. But clearly for yellow-naped parrots, that's a major problem. I mean, the reason that species has largely declined is because of poaching, not only in Costa Rica, but across its distribution. So it depends on the species.
And the nest boxes that are mostly being used now for repopulation, are they man-made nests or are they natural cavities or a mix? What is the?
Around the breeding center, the macaws are using both handmade, basically wooden boxes, and natural cavities. They're using them both. Yeah. I don't think I have the knowledge to say if there's a preference between one or each other. I think they see them as the same. Yeah. And in the wild with great green macaws, we haven't laid out any artificial nests. So they only nest in natural cavities.
Interesting. And if people wanted to help you with something, what kinds of things do you most need that their donations would go towards? People like to know that they're helping in specific ways.
Sure. Well, we have a number of different projects. Some that would go, for example, to forest protection or more to the habitat part of Costa Rica. We're trying to see where we can plant more trees. But planting trees means a lot of things. It means that you need to find someone to look for the seeds that would be used for a nursery. So you need trained people to go find seeds. You need a good car that will allow you to go to some of the most inaccessible roads that you can imagine inside a tropical rainforest area. I mean, cars get so damaged. I mean, Costa Rica doesn't have great roads, but where we work, I mean, any cent that you can give us that we can put in an extra part of a car helps.
That's good. That's good.
But also on the breeding at the breeding center, I mean, there's a number of needs, from food, from studying the wild macaw population. For example, Sarah was saying that one of the projects that we are doing this year is to put 10 radio collars to see how the chicks disperse. There's some previous information, actually a paper that came out in the early 1990s that suggested that many of the great green macaws that breed in the area where we work go to Nicaragua after the breeding season, at least for a few months, and then they come back, and near September, October, November, they actually move to the foothills of the mountains that I was showing you. We have found macaws that go as high as 2,500 to 3,000 feet in elevation, and they go there to roost. So we're gonna put a lot of miles in the cars and the people to try to track these chicks. Yeah.
If people want to volunteer for the Macaw Recovery Network, is there a program for that?
Yes, definitely. And we're always looking for volunteers to work both at the breeding center and also in the other programs. For example, if someone would be willing to or has the knowledge of climbing, you're more than welcome to go climb enormous trees in the tropical rainforest.
My days of doing that are over, I'm afraid. Yeah.
But I have to say that through our website, you can find some information and volunteer.
Great. And will the Macaw Recovery Network be expanding at some point to places like Nicaragua, where the migration of the great greens is happening, and collaborating? And that's probably part of Jose's future work, right? Is to
I would let Jose answer that. Yeah.
Tell us about your network you're building, Jose.
Well, I don't want to say a lot of it because I need to keep it for the retreat that we're going to have.
Everybody needs to come to the retreat. Did you hear that? Yeah.
It's important. But anyway, it's a great question. We were actually evaluating how we are going to expand or support actually to other populations, because like Sarah and Cesar were talking about, we're working with a species that they occurs not just in Costa Rica, they occurs in 10 different countries. If we want to ensure that those species survive as a species, we need to be also thinking how we can support them outside Costa Rica. We are doing definitely a great work for those species in Costa Rica, but we are looking bigger on that. They're great. We are already meeting people, analyzing other institutions that they are doing great work, like in Nicaragua with yellow napes, with great green macaws, Honduras, Guatemala, etc. And definitely there is a lot of things that we can export as techniques and work that we're actually doing and testing in Costa Rica, but we also can learn a lot of things that they are doing on the countries they are working with, similar populations. And that's something very important of the network. So the network, it's going to be this link where everybody who is interested as an institution or as a professional to be part of a big effort to preserve a species, to actually make a difference on that. Related with the question that was done before about the volunteering, there's a lot of ways also where people from overseas, they can support conservation by working with me at the network. There are definitely ways to give some of your time and make a difference, to understand how to connect better with the other institutions, analyze which are the critical population we need to look at. So I will be definitely very, very pleased to hear that somebody either now or at the retreat would like to give make a difference and be part of the network as a volunteer.
Fantastic. Yes. Jose can be very inspiring in this regard, I know. Yes, that's great. Let's see, do we have any other questions? I don't know that we do. Everybody hopefully learned a lot today and is inspired to support the Macaw Recovery Network, a great organization. Some of you know Sam Williams. He's one of the co-founders. A lot of great brains going there and passion, clearly. And the birds need you. And I'm so glad you're on their side to make a difference. So, and I'm going to be taking what was said today and writing an article for the Lefebvre Conservation Post, which some of you are familiar with. Lefebvre donates $500 to every project that we write about. So all we can do is keep mustering more and more people to be part of that support team, because you guys are on the front line doing great work. We're so grateful.
Thank you.
We're trying to take care of the birds at home, and you're out there trying to make sure they exist, and we're really grateful for that. So,
well, yeah, we appreciate all the help that you're doing as well, Anne, and everybody at Phoenix Landing. I think it's great, just raising awareness and yeah, sharing the passion for macaws and parrots in general. I think that's really it's very, very valuable, and it's that trickle across the board. All of that helps. So really appreciate it. Well, so yeah, and it's lovely to be here and to see you as well. And yeah, thanks for the invitation.
Of course. And I hope if you haven't already signed up for the retreat, you'll consider it and come meet Jose in person. He's got lots of conservation experience and lots to look forward to for the future. And we need to be on that team.
I think in the chat there's a couple more questions.
Oh, sure, go for it.
I
failed at my job here. Sorry about that.
Let's see.
Oh, there's a question about pineapples. What about pineapples?
Oh, pineapples.
Should we not buy them or buy organic only? Thoughts on this? I think that's a good question as we're talking about pineapples.
Yes, because when Sam was our speaker a couple years ago, he kind of put the fear in us about buying pineapples. And we've all been very careful about it. But that was good. You know, I bought pineapple very judiciously now. So I'm not sure if we can get them from other places, but like you said in your talk, 85% in the US market's coming from Costa Rica and cut down trees.
It's everything is a balance, and we promote local, anything local and anything seasonal. I think that's kind of what we're trying to promote. So wherever you are in the world, that I think applies. So depending on where you are, and organic is always good. I think there's definitely looking at what qualifications were involved in making that pineapple come to your house. I think that all of those things are part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And there are actually some questions in the Q&A, which there weren't before. I don't know. It says in the US, we have national parks with protections for some native species. Does Costa Rica's government have similar areas or parks for similar protections?
Yes, definitely. So Costa Rica at the moment roughly has a quarter of its area protected either under national park, wildlife refuge, or a couple of other categories. So we are probably one of the countries that have a larger proportion of its area protected, which is great. But I have to say that the majority of what we have protected is in the lowlands. So we have failed a little bit protecting some areas in the lowlands. Sorry, I think I made a mistake there. The majority of what we have protected is in the highlands. We don't have that many protected areas in the lowlands, specifically in the Caribbean lowlands. We do have a number of other private reserves and such. And it's one of the few countries that in the last couple of decades, rather than cutting more forests, we're reforesting more than what we have lost in forests. So Costa Rica actually now has a little bit more forest than in the 70s and the 60s. For example, the area where I'm at now, at this moment, in the northwestern Costa Rica, that used to be tropical dry forest. The vast majority of it was completely clear out. It was only pasture left in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s. Once the beef prices in the market declined, the forest started to came back.
I thought that was an interesting analogy that Sarah made earlier with the fast food boom exacerbating all the forest to cattle, and that's true. Less fast food would be a good thing for the planet for many reasons. Yeah. And somebody wanted to know about raising and selling specific parrot foods for captive birds overseas. I remember when Stuart Metz tried to do that with Molucca nuts from the Molucca Islands for Moluccans, and that lasted a little while, but not long. I'm not sure what that would be in this case, but you think of like mountain almonds or something?
Yeah, I'm thinking about the same topic of pineapple is locally. I think anything local, keep it local.
Yeah.
That would be my answer.
Yeah, because you don't have enough to go around for the birds there. Part of what you're doing there is repopulating those foods for your birds,
Right.
Natively.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the link with hopefully protecting and encouraging native forestation.
Yeah, I don't know if you can grow enough to support the captive parrot population too.
Well, I can actually comment about a project it was a personal project I did in Bolivia. There's a palm there that it's being used basically by macaws general, like blue-throated macaws, green-winged macaws. I know you love them, and also
Finally, somebody mentioned green-winged macaws.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's not too bad to make you laugh that you have one on your screen. Anyway, there's a palm that grows naturally, so you don't need to plant them, and it grows on high densities. So I contract an expert on palms to tell me how much nuts could be collected from the palm areas in order to not to compete with the native animals and cows that live on this side, etc. Because every animal eats those nuts or the pulp, depending if they have the capacity to actually crack them. So she calculated that 1 ton of nuts could be collected per hectare without competing with anything. And this could be used as a way to bring incomes to the people who has those natural trees on their properties, to encourage them to protect them so they support the macaws. The problem in Bolivia, because as you know, it's not the easiest country in the world to do anything, it's hard for export. But something like that, it doesn't need to apply to mountain almonds. It could apply to palms that are native of Costa Rica and they are not endangered. They could definitely be part of a similar project like that. And I'm definitely sure that people will be very pleased to buy this stuff in captivity, to know that this food, it's actually supporting the conservation of the wild population. So yeah, that's a personal experience I had. It works, but it's, and I was trying to make dry pulp. So I was putting taking all the humidity from the pulp, so you could actually put in dry bags and you put it back in water and give it to your parrot. I tested in Bolivia, it works perfectly, doesn't increase the nutrients of the food. And by other hand, you can also use the oil of the nut, which it's bad, but there's a lot of use of the African palm, which is a massive problem in the wild, like pineapples. But this oil from these native palms of Latin America could clearly replace the use of the African palm that it's been planted in Indonesia mostly, and be used for parrots in captivity as an extra nutrition. So I'm going to be able to do 2 talks at the retreat. I cannot talk anymore. There's no contract, but I want to keep it
a surprise. Yeah.
One is going to be about all we do at the Macaw Recovery Network, focus mostly at the network, but another one is going to be about parrot food. What we know the wild, and hopefully that's helped everybody who has a parrot as a companion, and be able to increase the amount of food or the variety of food that you supply to them.
Yeah, I know from our trips to Brazil with the bocaiúva plant being one of the big nuts for the birds, they sell in the stores bocaiúva flour. And so I always come back with a suitcase full of bocaiúva flour that I still have just like one package left, and I use it to make pumpkin bread. But at least, you know, it was abundant there, and it was one of the main parrot foods. So, you know, that was a way to dry it and export it. That would have been, you know, would potentially work for the nut you're talking, the palm nut you're talking about, Jose. Yeah. There's another question about ornamental palms with fruit in Florida, and would that be safe for captive parrots? I don't know if we know what kind of they're completely different palms, I'm sure. They're not the same kind of palm nuts that they currently eat in Central and South America, right?
No, but there are naturalized blue and yellow macaw populations in Florida.
Miami. Yes,
And there's a lot of example worldwide, and definitely it will be good to have a picture of it. I'm happy to help somebody to find out if this palm is actually safe for macaws. But macaws somehow, and parrots, when they are on areas that they're not native from there, they found out what to eat. And sometimes they surprise us by eating palms nuts that are not on the native range, but they actually they are very good adapting to new environments and getting advantage of that.
Yeah, it's the blue and golds in Miami. I guess we just need to see if they're eating from those palm trees. But Karen, it sounds like you need to come to Asheville June 4th and 5th so that you and Jose can have that conversation. All right, let's see, did we miss anybody? Any other questions? I think we're good. Oh, a whole lot more down there. I think we have it all right. Yep. Thank you so much. The three of you have been fantastic and inspiring as always. And I know without a doubt that the Macaw Recovery Network is going to grow bigger and bigger and do more and more. And I just think you're a fabulous organization. And we're lucky to know you at the front end and see you grow and hope to be part of that. So thanks again.
Thank you.
You already
Thank you
are
very
part of
much.
it. So thank
Good.
you.
Phoenix
Yes.
Landing and all the people who care about birds in captivity should also care about birds in the wild. And this is a great place to go for that kind of information and support. So, okay, thanks again, everybody. I'm so glad you shared your Saturday with us, and we'll see you again soon and appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Have a nice day.
Enjoy
You
your weekend.
too. See you soon, Jose.
See you. Bye bye.
Bye.